we're going to do is going to talk through how we could package and present this up. So as we talked about in the beginning, the readout or the process here is to do a readout back for our product team, in this case, our head of product. And the big question for them was, can I look at Q2 or perhaps something more recent? The action item we wanted to start with was we could first try and look at this month. We think that's probably the best step given the way that the business is changing pretty rapidly. And in particular, we talked about the number one roadmap item being virtual background. And so in order to get that, I can actually really quickly go into this theme search box, look at virtual background, and I can see that this is a component of functionality. And here are all the different functionality items that the product team has already identified. And so the nice thing that Thematic is doing here is that, we've worked with the product team, and these are all core product items. Many of these already have a product manager attached to them. And in this case, we already have virtual background segmented out. It's already in a feedback queue ready to go. So one of the ways that we can begin to both analyze and build insights around this is the idea of kind of relative change, to look at how things are comparing with virtual background versus prior months or compared to other product functionality areas. And in this case is what we're looking at. And so the thing I thought, in conversating with the product team before and my understanding of what was interesting to them was to do a quick comparison to prior month. And right now what I've done is set up a real quick look at June, which is the month we're in, compare it to May. And what I can see here is that in June, virtual background, the key product feature, the key roadmap item rather, that the product team is primarily focused on, has seen a very significant jump in mentions in June. So number one, that's a great story I can begin to tell. Now I just have to figure out the right other insights to bring to it, but it's definitely a takeaway that is going to be great to build upon because we want to make sure that we can highlight this succinctly, but the key area that the product team was interested in, virtual background, has a big jump in mentions. So the second component of that is trying to unpack as much as possible, what does that mean? What is, can I find anything out about those mentions of virtual background that might be more than just providing, comments or anecdotal feedback? And in this case, when I click on virtual background and I'm looking at June here, as I see on the right, I'm looking at comments, it actually becomes really apparent to me very quickly when I read these comments that the mentions around virtual background are not things, perhaps common in a product environment, like my virtual background doesn't work, or I wish it did this. But in actuality, these are feature requests. These are people, please let us enable the custom background, which works only in PC. Please add virtual background. Please give virtual background on mobile. Virtual background in all mobile devices. Lost the feature of, so it's very quickly. Now, I work in the insights team. I probably have some understanding that the virtual background feature is not enabled in mobile, but it's also really easy for me to see this and to be able to draw this out. And furthermore, I can grab easily a couple quotes that help best tell that story. So, for my own insights, I'm going to pull a couple quotes and we'll save those for later. And the last thing I probably want to do is just understand, is there any outside trending to virtual background? Did it Did it go up or down did it go up just in June, or was this an outlier? I can see this below that the trend did start to rise a little bit in May. So you can see I'm looking at the virtual background theme for Zoom. I can see that it did go from 1.6% dimensions in April to 2% in May to 2.7% in June. So it did rise. I think for the purpose of my story and what I'm trying to kind of convey to the product team, it's not as critical that I talk about this change from May to June as much as it is from April to May, as much as it is that I just highlight that big shift from May to June and talk about how this theme change and the change in volume is probably the biggest single area. Okay, so now that I have my roadmap item, really the big one that the product team is interested in, we can talk about emerging themes. I know that was another one that the team was interested in looking at. And so interestingly enough, if I go to June, I can actually see that there's no emerging themes that pop out, none of these rare themes, which are very granular themes. And that's actually okay. One of the things I've sort of understood from my prior work with the product team is like, it's better not to force some of those analytics on them, better to let the story emerge naturally. I do remember from working with them over December and January, how during the holiday season, we were able to surface insights within Zoom about a lot of people talking about connecting with family and friends. That was something that built a lot of credibility with the product team. And so, you know, we've gained a lot of credibility by surfacing emerging themes very carefully. We haven't done it all the time, and it's more been very carefully and surgically when we felt it was relevant. We did see in April and May profile picture increases in May, and battery drain issues, definitely functionality and usability concerns. So we felt like these are worth surfacing just as insights to the team. We probably won't push this too much. Again, it's not part of the main story. We don't want to distract from the core piece around virtual background. And then the last piece was around anything else we think is relevant, particularly around usability. And this one is, I think, one of the greatest callouts we can probably give to the team. And that is that if we look at the score change between May and June, we can see that the app review scores did go up a little bit. But the biggest reason for that increase in score was actually usability improvements. Essentially what's happening here is that less people who are responding to app review feedback are mentioning usability concerns. And even when they do mention usability, this average scores are increasing. And we see this in areas like, people talking about the app being slow, or people talking about login and password issues. Those are actually improving. Even though they're negatively connotated themes, they're actually improving. And the reason that this is so important is that the product team historically has their own roadmap, they've got their own agenda, and so they're not natural adopters to things like app review ratings or NPS feedback. And so the more I can begin to align them to scores and feedback intertwined, particularly impact metrics like this, on something we know matters to them, the better things will be, I think, to help build that case over time. So I'm definitely going to grab this and try and craft this into our story.